Hey everyone, it's Darcy from Snails and Fairy Dust, and I have these fun little fish earrings to make with you today. There is a pattern that you can purchase on my website, and you can find the link below. I have made that pattern half price of what I normally charge for patterns, so that more people can join along. And you'll actually get two patterns with that little bundle, this red one as well. So if you don't want to purchase the pattern, don't worry, just follow along and you can learn how to make the fish shape and then come up with your own pattern. So let's take a look at what we're going to need. Okay, so today I am going to be using these sterling silver French ear wires because I thought it looked like a fishing hook and it would be cute with these earrings. I'm also using size 15 round silver colored Miyukis to make the little loop at the top of my earring there. You could also use a wire guard, which would also be just as cute. But this is what I decided to use today. And I just want to show you the difference between the Miyuki Delicas and the rounds. So it's size 15 round and it's a size 11 Miyuki Delica. They are just slightly smaller. But because they're round and they're a little bit smaller, I think it just gives a nice finishing touch at the top there. I have 6-pound weight Fireline, but really for this project, you could use whatever beading thread you have. I recommend like a nylon beading thread or Fireline. And the beading needle I'm using today is a size 12. So to get started, I've cut about 5 feet of my thread, and I'm going to thread my needle. With the Fireline, you just want to flatten it between your fingernails a little bit, and that will help you thread it. And I also have my pattern, and we're going to be starting at the nose of the fish and working our way up from there, which you'll see on the pattern, the rows are numbered. So the first 2 beads I pick up in the first row, I'm going to pull them down towards the end of my thread. I want to leave about a 4-inch tail at the bottom there. And then I'm going to take my needle and come back around through just the first bead, which you'll see in a second. So wrap it around, and we're going to come through that first bead from the tail back up through it. So you end up, when you pull it, you have the 2 beads side by side like that. Make sure they're nice and tight. I like to hold the tail between my fingers so it doesn't loosen up. And next I'm going to pick up 6 of those size 15 round beads. If you're not using them, then you'd put your wire guard on at this point. So I'm going to take my needle and come down through that neighboring bead, just like so. And when I pull that tightly, I end up with a little loop. Now I want to reinforce that loop, so I'm going to come back up through the first bead and then go through all of those little size 15 beads. And then we'll go back down through that second green bead. And then we pull that tightly. And now we're ready to start our brick stitch, start weaving it up. So I'm going to turn it over, and I'm going to be working from my fingers up. And I always like to start weaving from hold it in your less dominant hand, and then weave on the other side. So I'm going to pick up my next 2 beads, and I'm going to bring my needle right underneath that thread bridge. And then I'm going to pull it through. Like so. And then I'm just going to make these beads sit right. There we go. And then we come up through just the second bead there. This row is an increasing brick stitch, increasing single brick stitch. So they should sit like that with that first bead hanging over the edge a little bit. And then we're going to pick up our next bead, come underneath that same thread bridge, pull it all the way through, and then come right back up through that same bead. Pull it tightly, and now you have your first row of brick stitch. And we're going to do that again. So we're going to flip the work over so that we're working away from our non-dominant hand. And then we're going to pick up the first 2 beads in the next row. And then I'm going to come under that first thread bridge again. And then back up through the second bead. And then we pick up our next bead. And this time we come through the next thread bridge, because we have 2 thread bridges this row. So we come through that thread bridge and back up through that bead. And then we want to increase on the last one too, so we pick up 1 more bead, bring it underneath that thread bridge, the same thread bridge as the previous bead, and then bring your needle right back up through that bead. And now you have your second row done. So the 3rd and 4th row of your pattern are going to be exactly the same. You're going to be using single increasing brick stitch, increasing at the beginning and the end of the row. And so I'm going to zoom through that here, and you take your time and get it right and meet me back here on the 5th row, because at the 5th row we're going to switch to increasing triple brick stitch. So meet me back here when you have finished up rows 1 through 4, and then we'll take a look at row 5. Okay, so now we are ready for our row of increasing triple brick stitch, which is the same, except we are picking up the first 6 beads rather than the first 2 beads. So I have the first 6 beads of the next row. I'm still going underneath that first thread bridge, pulling that through, and then this time I'm coming up through the second 3 beads. So that's beads 4, 5, and 6 that you've just added. So I'm coming up through that little group of 3 beads. I pull that tightly, tell the bead where I want it to sit. Sometimes you have to coax them into place, and it should look like that. And then for the rest of this row, you are just adding 3 beads at a time. So exactly the same as single brick stitch, we're just increasing the number of beads we're using at one time. So adding 3 beads at a time, we work our way across that row. And then row 6 is going to be the same thing, another row of increasing triple brick stitch. So we're almost finished with this row. Don't forget to flip your work over at the end. It's much easier that way. So you're holding it in your non-dominant hand and working away. I'm finishing that second row of triple brick stitch now, and we should have something that looks like this. And then from here, we're going to switch to quadruple brick stitch. So the same deal, but this time we're picking up the first 8 beads. So picking up 8 beads. We're still doing increasing, so we're still starting on that first thread bridge. Pull them through, and now we're coming up through the second set of 4 beads. There we go. And then we're just going to work across, and the same way we were doing with the triple brick stitch, but we're working in groups of 4. And then after this row, we're going to switch to decreasing brick stitch, which is just a slightly different technique to start the row. So finish up this row of quadruple brick stitch, and then meet me back here, and we'll take a look at decreasing. Okay, so here I am finishing up that row of quadruple brick stitch, and now we're going to do decreasing triple brick stitch. So I'm picking up my first 6 beads in row 8, and I'm coming through the second thread bridge from the outside because we're decreasing. So for decreasing, we start with the second thread bridge. So I'm coming through that thread bridge, and then I'm going to come back up through the second group of 3 beads, like that. But then this time they don't sit quite how we want. So what we need to do is come back down the outside 3 and then back up through that second group of 3 again. And when we pull that tightly, we now have them sitting the way we want to. And then the rest of that row we just do in the same exact way we've been doing it, adding 3 at a time. But when we get to the end, we're not going to increase. So we just go through that last thread bridge and we're done. And you have that nice little taper starting to happen. Now let's take a look at that again, starting that row because that's the tricky bit. So we're doing another row of decreasing triple brick stitch. We pick up our 6 beads. And then we come through the second thread bridge from the outside. So come underneath that second thread bridge, come back up through the second 3 beads. And then this time we're going to go down through the first 3 beads and up through the second 3 beads again. There we go. And now they are sitting nicely. And then from there, we just keep going 3 at a time as we would. And for the rest of this, it's exactly the same. So we just keep decreasing, decreasing, decreasing until we get to the tail. And then things start to get tricky again. So this is our last row of triple decreasing. And then we're going to do a few rows. We have 3 rows of single increasing again, which we did at the very beginning. So we're just adding the 2 beads coming through the first thread bridge, coming back up through that second bead, which you should remember this from the beginning. So it's just 3 little mini rows of increasing single brick stitch. Don't forget to add an extra bead on the outside of that row. But if you're looking at your pattern, you'll see if you're missing a bead. So just keep your eye on your pattern. Make sure the beads are looking right. I always check after I finish each row so I don't have to backtrack and fix a mistake. And now we are finished with that single increasing brick stitch rows. So for the tail, we're going to work it in 2 sections. So I pick up my first 2 beads on the first side of the tail fin, and it's going to be increasing. So starting on that first thread bridge, I add my 2 beads, and then I'm going to add 1 more, like so. And instead of going across, I'm going to turn my work and work back in the other direction. And then this time I'm adding another 2 beads, and this one is going to be decreasing. So the first row is increasing, the second row is decreasing. And if you're looking at your pattern, you could see by the angle whether it is increasing or decreasing at the end of a row. So this one, we want this to angle out like a little fish fin. So we're adding that extra bead at the end, increasing at the end of that row. And then for the next row, it's just 2 beads. So I'm picking up 2 beads and I'm going to come underneath that first thread bridge. And then I'm going to come up through that second bead. There we go. And then we just have 1 bead left. And for this last bead, it's not actually brick stitch. We're just going to pick up a bead and then we're just going to come down the other side of that last row. And I'm going to bring it all the way through those edge beads as well. So when I pull this bead into place, you see it's sitting in a different direction than the other beads. And that is perfectly normal. That's the way it's supposed to look. And then I'm just going to come back up through those beads. I'm just weaving back up because I want to come through that top bead just again so that it stays where it is and doesn't wiggle all over the place. So that is nice and secure now. And I need to work my needle over to the other side so I can add the other side of the tail pin. So I'm going to come down through these outside beads here. I'm coming down, how many is that? 6 of them. Coming down 6 of the outside beads there. And then I'm going to flip my work over and I'm going to work my needle back up. I want to end up in that center bead, the pink bead on the right in the center there. So that's where I want my needle to come out. Like so. And then I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm starting with 2 beads, decreasing. So decreasing on this side. It's actually opposite of what the other fin was. So the other fin started with increasing, this one's starting with decreasing. So I'm decreasing on that side, but then on the outside edge, I want to add a bead because I want that to angle out. So I'm adding one bead there, and that is increasing on the outside edge of that. And then I'm going to flip it over. Do it again. This next row is starting with increasing. And we will not increase on the other side of this row. So it's just 3 beads there. Like so. And then our next row, we want our needle to come out of that outside edge. So I'm going to work my way down. I'm going to go down through those 2 neighbor beads, and then I'm just going to come right back up through the ones next to that so that my needle is exiting that outermost bead. And then I'm just going to add that next row, which is 2 beads increasing. So add those 2 beads, come underneath that outside thread bridge, and then right back up through that second bead. And you guys, we're almost done. We're almost there. 1 more bead, pick it up, and then we're going to come through those outside 2 beads, 3 beads, and then we're just going to loop around again to reinforce that like we did on the other side. So coming straight back up, through that bead again, and now we're just going to weave in our thread. So I'm going to bring this needle down, and then I just want to weave it into my work, sort of going back and forth through beads until I feel it's secure. Work in sections. So like that's a row of 3. You wouldn't want to break up that row and like have your needle come out in the center. So work with the natural groups that are there. Follow the sort of lines of the beads so your thread isn't exposed. And I like to go around sets of beads like that, sort of wrap around them a couple of times, just make it extra secure. And then you're ready to clip your thread. And then you're going to take that original thread and string it on a needle and then weave that down into your work as well. And you are all done. The final step is to add our little French ear wire here. I have a pair of pliers and I'm just going to bend that away. So side to side, always side to side. Don't pull it wide. Just move it side to side like that and put it through. And never open your ear wire wider than you need to, just the minimum amount, because you don't want to bend it out of shape. And then you just close that back up. That is good to go. I think it's always important if you are selling earrings or giving them away or even just wearing them for yourself, with this kind of ear wire, you want to put those little backs on, the stoppers, so that you don't lose your earrings, because that would be so sad. So yeah, here are these cute little fish. I hope you enjoy making them. It's a really fast project. I mean, it takes me a little under 20 minutes. Like, I know I'm faster than most people, but it shouldn't take you more than half an hour, 40 minutes. It's a fun thing to do. Do it with a friend. You can make fun little fish earrings. And I hope you enjoyed this. All right. Thank you. Bye.